Okay, so we've gone ahead and cached this. Now when we scrub back, we'll see quite clearly how these radial forces are spinning these guys around. Let's check it out in a different view as well. But anyway, this is a pretty complex example using other particles to kind of drive the forces. We could also do some interesting things where we send these forces and make them move, maybe wander around. That would be a pretty good example. You could make some interesting turbulence. But let's go ahead and take a look at how we might create a force black box to simulate gravity. First thing we'll do is we're going to go ahead and turn off this cache. And then we'll go ahead and disable these clouds. We'll tell clouds when he turns back on, we should only use 1,000 of them. And the force, we don't really need to use that. Get rid of that particle group, get rid of those two things. We will use a 0.3. We'll set that into the direction. Let's hide that decay input. So the force we're going to have be a direct force with a strength of 10, decay of 0. And we want to affect all particles. I'll actually remove that forces that we had there. Let's use this all group, connect it to the force. Okay, so what we have here is just a really basic force setup. We'll reorder this to be logically correct. And what this will say is, of course, affect all particles, give them a force value of 10 in this direction. And right now our 0.3 needs to be updated. We'll set that to -1 in z, so that'll actually pull them down in z as their gravity. Let's turn on the clouds dynamic set, and now what'll happen is we'll get those cloud particles falling. And let's go ahead then and we'll take this dynamic set, we're going to rename it gravity, and then we'll go ahead and save it. We'll actually save it into the test2 directory that we've been using, and it's just going to use the name gravity. We'll save that, and of course we get the particle groups after loading. We're going to say exist or create, and then we can go ahead and remove that. And now let's say we had a different scene. We'll take this same box and squash them down. Oops. And let's say we had some particles here who were just sitting out on some plane, and we say, okay, well, we've got these cloud guys, we want to go ahead and add some gravity. And we'll add a test2 category black box that we just saved. We saved gravity. We'll drop him in here. Now, because we use the exist or create, it's going to go ahead and find that we already have those existing ones, and it's just going to use them. Of course, all is pretty easy to reuse. And now, it'll go ahead and just drop those guys there and apply that force to them. We could do something else with this force. We could say maybe if it's, we could add some conditions to work with. Maybe in mesh, we'll use add a node there. We want to expose particle position, test if the particle's position is inside that mesh, add an on value, and then we'll create a mesh out here to use. Oops. Use that node to pick him. And actually on these clouds at birth, we'll have them go out in the X direction at 50 units per second, 50% variation. And so now what we've set up is we've got those clouds moving out, and then as soon as they enter into that node, they're going to get affected by this force. And we're going to go ahead and ramp up this force a little bit to see the effect better. As they go in, they start to fall off. So just a pretty easy way to go ahead and create a black box using force to simulate a gravity. In this case, just use the 0.3 helper, specify -1 in z, and that'll pull it down. Something else you could do, you could easily also resave this as wind just by adding a 0.3. And this will allow you to use the 0.3 value as a wind value. We could say, no, actually this probably isn't the best way to set this up. Let's go ahead and actually we'll tell it to use a node. And then we'll use the get direction from the node. Say node's position, node's y direction. And we'll go ahead and set that strength to 10. And this way you could save this out using maybe a helper to say, I'll go back in here, disable this. So we'll rename this to wind force. Use the node, we'll pick that. And we could then have this node is driving the effect of those, kind of creating a wind value. Let's actually look at it from the front view. So they're not falling anymore, they're just being pushed out in space. There's some other things we could do. We could add a distance condition, take the particle's position and take the node's position. We can calculate that distance and pipe that into the force or the strength. Let's go ahead and actually add a multiplier to that. Distance into there. Have to drop it down even more. So the particles who are farther away are going to have a greater distance value, and so they're going to have a greater strength being applied. That might be fun if we go ahead and kind of change some of the different parameters there. Let's see, maybe the radial sphere. Nope, not so much. But anyway, you can see that force is a pretty powerful way to go ahead and create forces in the scene, whether it's using other particles or nodes to simulate things like gravity or turbulence. Just remember all these different methods that you have available down here can be all mixed up as well. You could go ahead and let's do this. Let's say we've got this type input, and the type is going to allow us to specify in a numerical order which one of these. This is an integer. It starts with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let's go ahead and create a random helper. And the random will go ahead and pipe into type. We want a value between 0 and we'll say 7.1 so that we do get a 7. And we want that update per animation. And let's go ahead. And this will kind of create some weird results because each particle is going to go ahead and pick one of these different types. And so that will add some extra variation as well. Quite a bit of variation, a little bit chaotic. But okay, so that's force.